Car makers are operating in a difficult environment with inflation, supply chain issues, and the cost of electrification among myriad headwinds. Joining us to share how they're navigating these challenges is Linda Jackson, the CEO of Peugeot. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ms. Jackson. Now, how is Peugeot really dealing with not just inflation in its key European market where consumers don't have disposable income for new cars, but also with supply chain issues and other headwinds?
Well, this is all about being agile. I mean, we live in a very, very chaotic world, so we have to be very, very agile. This is about literally day to day, sometimes, trying to find new solutions, new suppliers, new ways, new technologies. So this is the way that the automotive world works now. It's one of the days when you could plan so many things. We just live in a chaotic world. So, literally we can be planning suppliers, we can be looking at parts supply, etc. on a day-to-day basis, and we can be very, very agile. And of course, when we're actually building vehicles, down our lines, we're building electric vehicles, we're building what we call diesel or petrol. All of these are plug-in hybrid, or we're all going down the same lines. So we can adapt as well. So it is about, quite honestly, the very, very simple word, but the very difficult word, which is agility.
And let's talk about your electrification strategy. Demand is growing, but the costs of transition to EV are significant, aren't they?
Absolutely. And that's all about research and development. And every OEM is being faced by that they need to introduce electrification. And of course, particularly for Peugeot being very concentrated at the moment, and we want to become more international, but clearly we are led by the European environment, and the European environment is very much led down to electrification. But also we want to be a front runner outside. So you're right, it is all about making sure that we've got the platforms in place. It's about making sure we've got all of the technology that goes with it in place. And indeed, we're well positioned for Peugeot. We actually introduced our first 100% pure electric car back in 2019. And now, over the next 2 years, I'm going to introduce another 5 electric versions of our vehicles, so that by 2025, 100% of my vehicles will have electrified versions. So we're well on the way in that, I hate to call it a race, but it's in that journey. And you're absolutely right. This is all about enormous investments by OEMs, not only for the technology, but also linking with our partners, our suppliers, to be able to get that good supply, and also trying to negotiate cost reductions. We have a commitment within Peugeot, within Stellantis, that by 2030, we will have reduced the costs overall of our electric vehicles by 40%. So it's very important that we work on all fronts to be able to do that.
And how much have you invested in your EV transition so far, and what are your projections for future investments?
Well, I can't tell you exactly for Peugeot because clearly, I'm part of the Stellantis group. And in the Stellantis group, we have 14 brands worldwide. And I'm not going to divulge the levels of investment, but let's say that we're developing platforms for those 14 brands. And of course, those platforms are the same. We are being very cost efficient. We're able to build whatever brand it may be on the same platforms, which gives us that efficiency. So, but you can imagine that it is billions of euros that are being spent, not only on the technology simplistically of the electrification, but all of the technology in terms of driving aids that go with that. And of course, also partly autonomous driving as well, because going with all of these things, at the same time as we're developing electrification, we're developing autonomous levels for our cars. For example, lane departure. So when you're in a car going along the motorway and you start to get slightly dozy and you go into the next lane, it will immediately pull you back. That's one thing that is already available, for example, on many of Peugeot's.
1 in 6 Peugeot vehicles sold in Europe in 2021 was electric. How many EVs have you sold globally so far this year? And what are your projections for EV sales next year?
Rather than tell you wholesales, and I'm going to concentrate particularly on Europe because that's clearly where the bulk of the volume is. And you're absolutely right. In fact, at the end of 2021, 1 in 6 of our vehicles were electrified. Now I'm talking about 1 in 3. So you can see the acceleration in 8, 9 months, 10 months is enormous. And what we've said is that by 2030, and this is for Europe only, and as I say, every region is different, But for Europe only, 100% of our sales will be electric. So by 2030, 100% of our sales will be electric in Europe. So you can see the scale that we're doing. Along with that, of course, it's not just about selling our customers the electric vehicle. It's also about providing charging facility as well. So that's very important for customers. It's not just about the product, it's about all of the customer experience around it as well.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Linda Jackson, the CEO of Peugeot.